Well, the Coleman Center was founded in the 80s. So the Coleman Center's in a small town in Alabama of about 2,500 people. And it started out as a pretty traditional, very local community arts center in the 1980s, but was founded by people in York who were artists and arts enthusiasts who did kind of believe that art might have the power to revitalize this small town in Alabama. And the main founder, her name was Tut Reddick, and she would go to Penland every summer in North Carolina. And so had that dream that there might be might kind of turn into a craft school or something like that. But over the years, she would meet contemporary artists and pay for them essentially to go to York. And so over the years, there were like lots and lots of people who contributed to changing it. It's an organization that's been reinvented several different times.
Many iterations.
And Nathan and I went as artists in 2005 to do a project, and kind of stuck on. So that is how we got to the Coleman Center.
Okay. So at that point, it was kind of a contemporary arts organization when you arrived there, and so do you feel like it's transformed since then quite a bit, or just in scale, or has your involvement really changed it?
In scale, yeah. I mean, I think it was sort of like the organization was sort of fading a little bit, and this sort of confluence of artists came in at one time and sort of took it over, and didn't last that long, about 18 months, and then we were invited as part of that.
I would say it's been an evolution.
It's been an evolution, yeah.
And
or a journey, or all of those things.
Our interest was really in the residency program, which is mostly what the Coleman Center is known for. And I think one of our big contributions is to develop a process by which artists and community members who come from really different places, but we found oftentimes share a lot of values or interests, kind of an equitable process for them to know each other and develop projects as co-participants.
That's interesting. So it's sort of realizing that there is this overlap. It's not about the place necessarily, but it's kind of a way of working that like equity and vision maybe. And other than the residency, like what else does that translate into?
Yeah, so we have the residency that commissions socially engaged public art projects. And then we have an education program that does some traditional arts education and some funky community stuff, I guess you'd call it. We kind of split the difference on that. And then we show exhibitions, but the residency program and the visiting artists and the social engagement is kind of the current that runs through everything that we do. It's the common thread.
And it's a really collaborative environment, and we try to kind of break down the barrier between sort of the artist and the audience to the point where people are really informing the creation of new work. In a way where there's a kind of shared authorship.
Has like the kind of community changed around it? Have they been more responsive to the things that you're doing? I
mean, I feel like as the community's like kind of gotten hip to what we're doing, and like once we realized how adventurous the community really was. I mean, sometimes when you're doing something like a little avant-garde or a little outside of the box, there was like, we would have doubts, or artists would have doubts. Are people going to want to do this? But we kind of discovered that, people really want to do it, And there's something that's so great about a small town, and there's so much freedom there, and that it really the part of it being social and about getting to know people, and just the openness and the generosity that people have there. That actually, like, as long as we had this base of, I think, being genuine and then basing something on shared values or shared interests. Almost the weirder it was, the better.
We have a gallery, but that's like not, most of our work is just out, like kind of wherever it lands.
I was interested in understanding who you view as peers. Like, what is that network?
Well, lots and lots. Yeah. There's something to me that's like really loaded about your question, because one thing that's really exciting about living in York, or like I think a small town, you have like a commonality with people who might be really different from you because you're in the same place, and there's something that's really liberating about that. But then because our community is a little isolated, sometimes I think we feel like we have a lack of peers. So it's interesting. But and before I say what we've learned from other people, I will just say, like, we've actually learned a huge amount from the community. They've been, like, probably the biggest resource to inform our process, and that we consider them collaborators. But then outside of that, we've had a really strong relationship with Space 111 in Birmingham, which is, you know, they've been around since the 1980s, and we're very, like, rooted in the alternative arts kind of movement. And it was really powerful to connect with them and, like, feel like we had access to that whole history and understand kind of the tradition that we could steep ourselves in. And I think it was really in stark contrast to, you know, we started an artist group when we were in undergraduate, and we were in kind of a very traditional studio-based program, hungry for something else, started an artist group. I don't think we even knew that we were an artist group. You know, we just knew we were trying to do something and figure it out, and we were doing these projects. And somebody even told us, was like, hey, do you guys know that you're actually, you know, these projects you're doing with other artists, this is actually your work, this is your creative practice. And it had never occurred to us before. So to go from that to, like, finding this huge community of people who've been doing this and realize we are steeped in a tradition was really powerful. But and then on top of that, there are tons of people who have inspired us. Project Row Houses in Houston, Texas is, like, I mean, have inspired so many people, and what they do is so amazing as, like, a neighborhood project and an ongoing collaboration that's dedicated to community and social change. I think we've also drawn a lot from, like, other traditions outside of the arts and looking at like different kinds of organizing. And obviously, because we're in Alabama, Alabama has such an amazing history of social change that's really great to connect to.
I'm kind of interested in, you know, your own art practice. You said you moved there as, you know, artist in residence. You kind of took over a program. You're kind of many years into that. What does it mean for your art practice now? What are you working on? What is, you know?
Well, we work less and less. No, I mean, it's just that we're working on lots of projects. So it's really changed from being more studio based to conceptual or installation type stuff.
Well, it's interesting. It's, like, so funny to try and negotiate the boundary. Like, how do we, like, view our practice at the Coleman Center versus, like, other projects that we do in York versus projects that we do elsewhere? And, like, there are distinctions, but also I think it's better for my mental health when I try to blur the distinctions. I'm not, I guess the jury's still out on what's best for the mental health, but. It's
basically, did you put the Coleman Center's logo on the, like, postcard? That's like, okay, I guess it's the Coleman Center also.
We haven't done any projects in York that was our work that wasn't like directly associated with the Coleman Center. Right now we're doing a project in Minnesota, actually.
It's kind of based off Pledge of Allegiance a little bit, and the history of the Pledge of Allegiance. And my grandparents are from Minnesota. My grandmother is the caretaker of the one-room schoolhouse where my grandpa went to school. So we are rebuilding this schoolhouse inside the soap factory and renting all the content and doing a video installation involving all these kids from the town who are doing different, you know, iterations of the pledge, which has, like, different hand gestures and sort of wording, and so that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting.
It's also really fun to work with other people who are, like, really good at what they do.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
It's always nice when it's like, I'm not responsible for everything.
Yes.
There's, like, someone else doing their job, so I can do this.
Yeah.
It's good.